Welcome to the CEO Pulse podcast. So today we have David Lecko with us. You've been in business for around 2.5 years, and you have a background in software, right?
That's right.
So it's a little different than what we have seen so far, and I'm very interested in it.
Of course.
So please tell me a little bit of how you got started and pretty much, I mean, your story, behind the whole thing.
100%. Yeah. So I've been interested in business just ever since I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But with my current business, the reason why I got started was out of my own personal need.
Okay.
And it's actually a software that helps real estate investors get more deals. It's called Dealmachine.
Dealmachine.
Yep.
I've heard the name.
Yeah.
So for those who are not in the real estate investment world, it's actually one of the biggest softwares out there as far as resources and most well known. So you guys had a lot of growth real quick too.
We've had a lot of growth. 8x this year.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I actually
watch out, Grant Cardone, right behind you.
Yeah. I actually just started because I had my own need,
mm-hmm.
and I was trying to do this thing called driving for dollars,
mm-hmm.
which is where you actually find houses that look run down.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like buying lead lists online, you kind of create your own lead list, and it's of properties that look run down. And then what you have to do is you've got to write down the address, look up who owns it, follow up with a postcard or a call that says, I want to buy your house. And then remember to follow up again. So
right.
You're doing all that while you're still driving and looking for properties. And I was just totally forgetting to do like the second half of the steps. Yeah, or even just look it up because it was more fun to drive around.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept doing that.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of legwork that goes into it, especially if you're doing stuff that usually entails bootstrapping. Whenever you get started, I mean, you just have to put in the elbow grease,
mm-hmm.
and it's really interesting that you came up with a solution that was meant for you, and then it just kind of turned into something else.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can relate in that sense because of some stuff that I built for my own use, and then
mm-hmm.
next thing you know, it's there's interest in the market.
Right.
It's I mean, that's really cool. You mentioned high school. So when do you think like the entrepreneur bug kind of started roaming around?
Man, I had such a great upbringing, but I knew there was people at my school whose like parents could afford more than mine could.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted nice things, and that's how I like originally started. I read this book from my dad's friend who had done some entrepreneurial things called The 4-Hour Work Week. I'm sure you've read it and everybody's heard of it. But that was like the first real taste of like what entrepreneurship could give you. And in that case, it gave Tim, the author,
mm-hmm.
a lot of time. So it wasn't just like things and stuff, but it was just like maybe I wouldn't have to go to work every day for
quality of life, right?
Until I died. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no. So it's amazing, really, what books, what the perspective of books can do. I mean, a good book that falls into your lap at the right moment, it really, I mean, it can be a pivotal point and really life changing. I mean,
yep.
I am an avid reader now, but I wasn't, in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have been. I wish I would have jumped into it when I was, even back in high school, man. Like, it's just. The growth that I've seen within me and my businesses and everything that I do as a person has exponentially,
mm-hmm.
Been the impact has been exponential, since I started, really paying attention to other stuff aside from what I already knew.
Yeah.
And books have, they just play a major role.
Totally.
The 4-Hour Work Week, it's one of those books it kind of drops the bomb on you. Like, man, what the fuck am I doing? You're right. I'm working
100%.
all this, You can delegate, you can do this, you can do that. That's doable.
Yep.
And I mean, I think at the right moment, something like that can really spark, driving curiosity. So you started. How did you get into software? I mean, you were doing real estate investments, obviously,
mm-hmm.
And then did you transition completely into software? Do you still have your other business going on, or?
So I actually went to school for computer engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I had a job at Accenture. My job was actually to rewrite this software program for the U.S. Postal Service.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot of software development on that job. And then I built this thing on the side called Chapter Builder, and it's a recruitment tool that's used by over half of the fraternities and sorority chapters across the country now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my side project that I quit Accenture to do full time. Mm. And so I sold that and was working for that guy for a while. And then I was like, instead of retirement in a typical like stock market account where I have no control, I want to have control. over the cash flow coming in every month. So I was like, I want to invest in rental properties. And I was looking for one that was a good deal, and that's why I got interested in real estate.
That makes sense. So it was more of a transition for you than into something else that you could manage.
It comes back to like wanting control over your life.
Mm-hmm. So did you feel a lack of that when you were at Accenture?
Well, yeah, actually.
Yeah. How?
I mean, you can't give yourself a raise just by working harder. You have to convince. They had this thing called laddering.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they do is they rank everybody in the entire company against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you only get a raise if you're in the top 10%. And so I realized it wasn't that I had to work harder than everybody else. I had to convince someone else that I worked harder than everybody else. And there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like having to convince somebody that I'm working hard instead of actually working hard. So that's when I felt the lack of control. Not that I had missed any promotion or anything, but like I knew that was the scenario, and I was just like, I don't like that.
Well, one thing that I hear often about the corporate world is there's always going to be this glass ceiling, right? You feel like you're climbing, and then you hit something because you don't. I mean, you run the risk of not knowing the right person, even if you have the talent, the skills, the drive, and everything you need. But if you don't have that, the right connection, unfortunately, it's the way it works in most industries. I mean, I know I've had that barrier before, not from being in the corporate world, but doing business with corporate, with corporate entities.
Well, here's the thing though, your direct manager could be a total idiot. Mm-hmm. And you're at their mercy. Okay, so like great example is like I had 3 internships at AT&T, had a lot of success with this employee idea sharing, crowdsourcing thing they had there. And so my idea was like the top 10 for the quarter, and you could actually pitch those ideas to the CEO. It was kind of like you submitted such a good idea, they're going to pick the top and you get to pitch it to the CEO. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't get to pitch mine because I had gone back to school, and my direct manager said, sorry, policy is you can't come to work if you're not on the payroll. So I missed the opportunity to pitch the idea to the CEO of AT&T because my direct manager was an idiot. And so I think that's the real issue is like, at least if you have your own company, you don't have to worry about somebody who like doesn't get it, that's in charge of your destiny.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that you have the ability to bet on yourself.
Right.
When you do have the weight of the company is on you, but you also have all that I'll say quote unquote freedom when you're starting off, because there's really not a lot of freedom until you actually build it out, and then you can delegate or automate and do other stuff like that. But you do have that sense of authority of what's happening. At least you feel like you have a grip of, okay, cool, I can go this way today, and you know what, no, that's a better way for me. And then you start kind of shaping, and there's no way of shaping your road whenever you're under some other roof that's not yours.
Right.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
AT&T is a great company. I just happen to have somebody that I like listen to, and then the CEO was like, "Oh, what? Couldn't you get a hall pass?" And that's when I realized I was like, "Oh, I'm the idiot for listening to somebody just because they were in charge of me."
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a big rule follower, I guess, as you can tell.
Well, I mean, most entrepreneurs
really strung a nerve.
Most entrepreneurs are not though. Like that's the thing. I've heard once that entrepreneurs complain by fixing shit, by making stuff better, by improving. Mm-hmm. And if you stick to the norms, if you stick to everything that's already laid out, you can't do that stuff. I mean, you just operate within that space, and if that space is not working for any reason, you're kind of screwed, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you're a super clever guy. How old are you? You're
30. I just turned 30.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you've been in software since high school, developing. So,
well,
I'm trying to find the transition.
Yeah, I went to college for computer engineering, so that's when I took my first programming class and programmed my first thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
And now, jumping in because you've done corporate, so jumping in from corporate to like the darkest days of your entrepreneur journey, how has that been? I mean, it's not all flowers for the most part, right? Unless you're super lucky, but I haven't.
I've had a pretty lucky journey.
That's one thing I want to hear about. Tell me, please.
So I built this thing called Chapter Builder, to rewind a little bit. Had worked a full year in my spare time getting my fraternity chapters on it, and then we sold it to this company.
What was it?
It's like a recruitment tool for fraternities and sororities.
Okay.
Basically, we're all familiar that like there's chapters on college campuses.
Right.
They all have a headquarters, and those headquarters have a CEO of the whole fraternity, and that CEO's job is to grow the organization. But if they don't have a tool, he has no idea what's going on the ground. Just like a sales team, if you've got a sales manager, that sales manager wants to look in the CRM and making sure they're making phone calls, that leads are coming in, that they're closing at the right ratio. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same thing for like growing fraternity chapters. You want to make sure the chapters are following a process to meet new people, track those people, and ultimately extend an invitation to them like in the right way, and then tracking all their ratios to see what they need help with. So that's the thing. That's the thing that I built, and again, it was out of a personal need because like right out of college, like I had just been the recruitment chair for my chapter, and then I read this book on how to recruit for your fraternity, and they were like, use a spreadsheet, and I ended up selling the software to the author of that book.
Really?
That was the whole goal. Yeah, it was to like build it based on their philosophy. We sold it for like a measly $10,000.
Well, I mean, it's 10K of something that you
Right,
possibly started doing for.
Totally. I mean, I was like ecstatic, right? Because that was the first time I ever sold anything in my life.
Oh man, yeah.
It was like a pretty big ticket item for like the first thing, but based on the time we had put into it, I mean, like it was way undervalued, right? We put in a whole year.
Often,
2 people.
Yeah, it happens often on
It's
first
okay,
businesses.
though. Yeah, but like Gary Vaynerchuk, looking back at it, he's always like, go work for somebody for free that you respect and is a good entrepreneur.
Right.
And so that's basically what I did.
Yeah.
Right? Like I gave this software to this entrepreneur for free, essentially, and then I worked for him, and I took a big pay cut from Accenture, I think probably 20K less. So I was probably making like 50,000 instead of 70 or something like that. For the next 4 years, I helped him build a business around this software, Chapter Builder. And so I learned a ton from him, and I think I had, it wasn't like a terrible dark moment, but I was just like 4 years in, and I was just like, man, I thought I would have more control over this, but then I like forgot, like, this isn't my business. Like, I may have started the technology, but at the end of the day, like, they own it. And so that's when I realized I was like, I need to take more control to have this freedom that I want. And I thought I would do that by continuing to work there and then investing in rental properties. But then I found out I had another pain point that I solved with Dealmachine. And I was like, oh, other people want to use this too.
About that.
So like, let me quit my job as soon as possible and like focus on Dealmachine.
So let me backtrack a little bit. You did say you got pretty lucky, but I mean, it sounds to me like I mean, you had been preparing for a long time, and then the opportunity just kind of,
Yes,
walked by, but you were ready to take, something like that. If you hadn't seen that that opportunity, that book, or put yourself in that spot, it wouldn't have.
Preparation has definitely been happening. I think the biggest difference in my story is like I didn't like set out to start a business and then look for an idea. I was just like preparing, and then like the idea came, and then I was just like, let's run with it. Rather, you know what I mean? Rather than try to search for.
So you prepared for whatever. Let's just do stuff and then solve problems. It's okay. So this is what I'm seeing. You saw a void in one spot, and then you solved it, and then you got an opportunity out of that.
Right.
Then time passed. You started doing other stuff, and then you got mentorship. But then you saw another void, and then you solved it.
Yeah.
And then you got another opportunity, which is now Dealmachine. It's it's one of the fastest growing software companies that I familiar with.
Definitely this year, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I think I'm seeing a pattern here. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what? Okay. So you've done it a couple of times, and you put yourself in situations that that you can capitalize from.
Right.
What does that do in terms of mindset?
Okay, what do you mean?
For example, what does that do to you in terms of mindset as a person, as a confidence builder? Because one of the things what I'm trying to get to is one of the things that really haunts a lot of entrepreneurs starting off, or it's being able to not do something once and then I'm a one-hit wonder, and then they start backpedaling and go back to the 9 to 5.
Yep.
But what happens when you have, all right, you do it once, you do it again, do you feel like, for example, if some other opportunity came by right now, would you think you'd be able to take on it? I mean, do you have, is your mindset, fixed to this type of level, or do you start growing and expanding on when you want to build on?
Great question, man. So I have this thing, everybody's like, are you going to sell Dealmachine? When are you going to sell Dealmachine?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, nowhere near in the future. And one of the things is like, well, what would I do? Like, I'm still having a ton of fun. I still feel like I have a lot of plans on how to grow it. So I feel like that's what I should do,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people are very focused on like, I'm going to build to have this huge exit. You know what I mean? And then like, that's the event. And then I feel like people are lost when they have that. And they're like, what do you do next? So I've been really tried to discipline myself to be a lot more long-term focused.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, also like both, I've done it twice, had two successful things, but neither one of them was like something I came up with. It was just like, oh, I stumbled upon this need for myself, and then I was able to identify it. So like, if I didn't have Dealmachine, I don't know how long it would take me to like stumble upon another thing.
Something
I don't
else,
know.
right?
Like I don't have a formula for that, but it just happened for me. So.
Well, but you have the aptitude though to recognize something like that when it comes along.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost a formula in itself. I mean, just pay attention to what's happening, what the needs around you are, and if you can solve it, if you can capitalize on it, you might be able to do something bigger. Mm-hmm. It always takes. I mean, we were talking earlier. You were being pretty modest. Have this company and
sure, yeah,
yeah, but it's something really that's making a dent, at least in the industry that we are familiar in.
Yeah,
and if you don't have the capacity to take that type of risk or that step forward, things like 8x growth does not don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. What's in the forefront for you right now? Like what are you guys looking towards? Mm-hmm. You said, and I don't know if you can talk about it or you want to talk about it or not, but you said you had a couple of other projects going on. You don't have to go into details. I know it's like a lot of it could be IP and whatnot, but
I don't have that much
it sounds like you have a lot of passion for what you have right now. And
with Dealmachine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's definitely true. Yeah. So we've actually focused specifically on just like driving. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to continue doing that. Like all the updates that are planned for the next year plus are all focused on driving. Mm. So I think a lot of companies or a lot of people ask, well, why don't you do websites or text messaging or list pulling or whatever? Mm-hmm. And there's so many of those softwares out there. We want to actually really, really focus in on this one aspect so that we are continuous, like 5-10x better than anything else. Because what happens is like people see, oh, Dealmachine was so successful, like I want a piece of that action. So that a lot of them are going to create their own versions of like a driving for dollars technology.
Right. Yeah, it always happens if you bring ground into something.
Right.
There's always going to be.
I don't think that they'll ever be as good because those people are already doing 10 things. Mm-hmm. They're already doing 5 things. And nobody has, 20 staff members only working on driving for dollars.
Yeah, the focus.
Technology. And so that's what my strategy is with Dealmachine right now, is to keep going very, very, very deep on that one thing as our differentiator. Mm. So if you're serious about using this marketing strategy, you're going to want to use the very best tool.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. One thing that you guys have that I think it's pretty cool is the type of culture that you guys have. Like, how'd you project the company? I mean, it just seems like a fun place.
Okay,
altogether.
We also just watched the news, the breaking news from my marketing manager and success manager.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff like that. I mean, if you have a team that is that cohesive, and you have that type of brand within the company, mm-hmm. not looking at the marketing materials, but that type of attitude within the company. I mean, I think you can do a lot of stuff, man. It's pretty refreshing to see something like that. I haven't seen it in many places, and I think it calls for my attention. It seems genuine, and I think it goes a long way.
Thank you. I feel so blessed. I feel so fortunate to have the team we do, and it's awesome to hear you say that.
How does that happen?
Okay, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to think, how did that happen? Well, I don't know if this is like a formula to repeat it, but here's at least what was going on in my head as I was starting it. So we had me and my partner Dave, like we had this vision of being like focus on creating the absolute very best product and doing what's best for our members at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started to hire, I remember I was like, whoever this is, like, I'm going to see them 8 hours a day. That's more than like any girl that I'm dating. That's more than my sister or my mom or my dad. Like, I'm going to want to hire somebody that's got the like potential to be like a really good friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was interviewing, like, I was looking for that above and beyond anything else, because I was like, I know that I'm going to see you so much. Like, I'm not hiring you if you're going to annoy me or we're going to think a lot differently on a certain thing. And then I think I did pull back a little bit now that we've grown more. Like, I can't have that like close friendship with everybody. And then also I think generally it's like kind of good to have some boundaries between like a really close friend and an employee. But that's how it started. From like the first person that we ever hired was I wanted to
have a personal connection or relationship with that person.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that's doable as you start growing. It's doable at a management level, but it can get especially if you have people out in the field. I mean, it can it can get tough to do stuff like that. But
One other thing that might be helpful, like for somebody listening, is very early on, my business partner and I, we weren't on the same page about a lot of stuff, like culture included. Like, culture is just like every day how people are interacting and stuff.
Right.
We actually hired this E-Myth coach. So E-Myth is a book, stands for the entrepreneurial myth.
Right.
And then they've got like a coaching program that goes along with it. And so what they help you do is build a business that is repeatable and scalable, and it basically forces you to like write down like, what is your mission? What are your values?
Right. They push the franchise setup for a business because of the automation benefits.
Right. Yeah. Basically, the premise of the book, if you haven't heard about it, is like, example, a plumber. A plumber works for this plumbing company and he does the work of a plumber, and he's like tired of working these long hours, so he starts his own plumbing business. So he goes into business for himself. He basically has this entrepreneurial seizure, is what they call it. And then as soon as he opens his own business, he just goes to work being a plumber. But he doesn't like have customer support. He doesn't follow up on calls. He doesn't like have business like systems, because he just knows the work of the plumber and he keeps doing that. And his business doesn't really give him a lot of the freedom he thought it would, because he's doing all the work, Yeah,
he's wearing all the hats.
Yeah, so the E-Myth helps you really like write down the important things like values, create systems so that other people can do things in the way you'd want them to do it. So I forgot about that, but we did that in the first 3 months, and it helped he and I actually get on the same page about a lot of stuff. So I feel like that was the beginning of like, well, how did we create our culture? Sat down and
that's very, very smart. I do performance meetings with corporate clients, and it's actually one of the first things that we do. So we'll do a discovery session to see what the temperature of the overall company is, and then from that start branching out and see if everybody's on the same page. And what you find in a lot of already developed companies that maybe did that at a weekend retreat somewhere 5 years ago, a lot of people forget about it, and they don't really adopt it. A lot of companies forget about it, and they don't adopt it or push it forward with their staff.
Right.
And so what you end up with is a slogan on the wall and people not living those values. Not and really what they are is it's a code of behaviors that are this is the stuff that's going to help us make decisions within the company. This is the stuff that's going to drive the attitude that that we show with amongst ourselves, to our clients, to whoever touches our business. And it's nice to have them on the wall, but it's a lot better to see them happening live, and still have a sense of ownership of what's really talked about.
Totally.
And actually being executed. So no, it's pretty cool. I was pretty impressed when I saw that. I was like, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, man, I love it. So if obviously, I mean, you're looking at a lot of material out there, so growing and reading and learning more about entrepreneurship. So you've had this business for 2.5 years, right? What would you say has changed in you as a person from the day that you took the leap into owning your own luck per se up to this point?
Okay, man.
And it can be a loaded question.
Yeah, dude. I feel like I was like more awkward back then than I am now. And so like just talking to people or talking to somebody that I knew like might be a potential customer used to make me like really uptight, and then I would totally sound unnatural and like really awkward, and would never like like the pressure of like selling was also like a big fear of mine.
Yeah.
And then I think the way I approach it now is like, all right, I'm gonna have a conversation with them because we're just two people and we're friends, and I'm gonna try to maybe poke around and dig in and see if like are they struggling with like the leads are costing too much, or I'll just wear a shirt that says Dealmachine. They'll be like, what's that?
Yeah.
So like there's just ways of just bringing up what you do and how it can help them in such a natural way that I think I've definitely like advanced personally in the last 2.5 years. Just realizing that.
Overall, like you mean in openness and in sales?
Definitely in sales. Yeah.
Cool. No, it was actually one of my biggest fears too. I mean, just coming across as a salesy,
right?
Person. Whenever I met somebody, it's hard to do. It's hard not to do in real estate. Because every person that you see as a potential client, seller, investor, everybody needs real estate, right? So it was one of my biggest barriers to really break down and feel comfortable with, coming forward and having that conversation about sales and not feeling awkward about it.
Right.
So if you were to kind of narrow it down in a couple of tips for the listeners, what would you say can help them overcome? Because I know that's for a fact it's one of the biggest fears that people in or people coming into entrepreneurship get. It's okay, cool. I can picture everything. I know how the company's gonna look. I know what it's. I know who I'm gonna hire.
Yes.
I have the image, the brand, and then it comes time to pick up that phone or talk to your first lead or your first prospect, and people freak the fuck out.
So be a deal finder, not a deal maker. A lot of my members that use Dealmachine that are beginners, they'll say like, "Oh, I see this house. It's run down. Like they should definitely sell it to me. That's exactly what I'm looking for." And then the seller like doesn't want to sell it because they want to keep it for tax purposes. And my I'll say just students will be like, "Well, what do I do?" And I'm like, "Move on. Like you got to go find somebody who wants to sell their house. You don't want to. You're not making them sell their house." So you're actually trying to be helpful. You're trying to be curious. You're trying to ask questions to figure out can you help them, through selling their house. But you're not making them sell their house.
Right.
So I think that's my piece of advice is like be a very curious person. Maybe ask questions that'll kind of lead to finding the thing you want to find. But if it's not there, you can't force it.
Right. Be a deal finder, not a deal maker. I like it.
All of the best interactions that I've ever had have been like meeting somebody like Brent Daniels or Max Maxwell who really share Dealmachine with their audience. But like I don't think I asked them to. I think that I was in the right spot to meet them organically, had a natural conversation about totally something else. We did discuss like, oh, what do you do, etc. And then after the fact, I think they decided on their own that they wanted to like share Dealmachine because they like it so much, and then they knew who was behind it as well. But I didn't really like have them on a target list or like I didn't like force them to or try to make that happen. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, there you have a personal connection, and then you have a solution to a problem that's happening, because I mean it is a problem. Whenever you go, I mean, there's very few applications and things that I can look into. Or refer to if you're door knocking. I mean, it's a niche. It's a very particular type of problem. And if you have a solution for it, I mean, well, I mean, now you have that, and then you have proximity, and then the connection. They see, okay, I like this guy. I want to do business with this guy, and move forward. I do like it how you say be a deal finder, not a deal maker. I think. And this is across the board on different verticals. It's a lot of times people tend to get caught up in trying to make something work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been working on that for 6 months, or that proposal for 3 months or this contract for, and then, it's not going anywhere, but instead of dropping it and moving on to something else, they stick with it. And I think my theory on that is the fear of the next sale, the fear of the next unknown lead, or the fear of the next unknown prospect.
Yeah.
So, no, it's
too much pressure if you're thinking about making a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do well under that kind of pressure.
I like it, man.
Yeah.
Cool. So awesome, dude. A lot of nuggets here, and it's refreshing to see this type of company happening. And so you're playing in software, yet you're making a dent in real estate. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that just it shows that you can do stuff that you love, mm-hmm. and then still have that trickle over to different verticals.
100%.
If you were to give 3 resources to, and I want to talk about Dealmachine as well. I want you to tell people where they can find it and how to do it. Yeah. But if you were to give out 3 resources on stuff that's helped you become a better entrepreneur, mm-hmm. What would those be?
Man, I'm a big fan of courses and coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody I learned from was Ramit Sethi, and his book's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really got me started on how to create an online business. And so another resource would be Profit First. Now that I have a business, how do you know how much money to take for yourself versus invest back in the business?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people feel greedy, taking money out of the business. Or they'll feel like they need to funnel everything back into the business, and they're kind of starving themselves, and it's not good for the long term.
It's not sustainable, exactly.
So that book has helped my partner and I get on the same page on how to operate our business from just a cash standpoint, what to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be another great resource I'd recommend.
Cool. You said, you mentioned profit right out of the gate. It's actually a level 1 priority. As companies grow, staff grows, and revenue grows, you have different levels, right?
Right.
So it's a level 1 priority. So you have, there's this noble notion that people come first on a level 1 company, but it's if you can't keep the lights on, people are not going to be there.
Yeah.
So you need to focus first on profits,
mm-hmm.
and then people, and then systems. A lot of times it happens that people try to get systems implemented first, but you have nobody to run it with, or you ran out of cash by the time your
mm-hmm.
system is ready.
Oh man, especially in the software world,
mm-hmm.
this profit first thing is foreign language to them.
Mm-hmm.
So many software companies are intentionally unprofitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's profitability is a choice. I didn't realize that until really this past year. There's a lot of companies that will raise a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
They'll hire a ton of staff, 3x what we have, and they're doing less than we are, and they're intentionally operating in a deficit. So I realized this year that how much profitability is a choice, and thank goodness the book helped me figure that out.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any funding or anything. Luckily, my co-founder and I are technical, so we basically just worked on savings for a year and a half. He's married, so they had dual income, and he had savings, and so did I. So we just kind of worked off
Went to town on it, take a risk.
Yeah, for a year and a half. So that's our story. So understandable if you have to get funding, but
yeah. But if you have to leverage it right out of the gate, you're also leveraging the potential that it may produce, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's either going to be an interest payments, an ownership stake, or
right.
So one of those. No, I love it, man. So if you were to go back and run into your 17-year-old self,
oh boy,
what would be the one thing that you would tell that kid?
Oh man, about business,
about life, the path that you've taken, and
yeah.
You're an entrepreneur, so I know every road that we talk about is going to lead back into that.
Man, I felt like I set up myself in such a good way. I saved 50% of every dollar I made since I was probably 18.
That is crazy.
That's why I had the savings to work on Dealmachine.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Dude, I know I lived small, but I'm really happy with that choice now.
Yeah.
And obviously, everyone listening can't go back and do that, but I'm really thankful. I feel pretty strong that I did that the right way.
Build a cushion.
Yeah, wasn't making a ton, but the savings allowed me to
mm-hmm.
to do something that I felt mattered. Which was more important than the retirement account they were in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, man, that's awesome. And it's not a very common answer that I get.
Yeah.
You know, especially, you know, talking, you know, 17, 18 years
Right.
old.
Well, I mean, everybody else was like going on all kinds of trips.
Yeah.
I mean, they were dating women. Like, I wasn't. You know, like, I was at home saving money, hanging out on my computer.
Doing stuff.
Yeah, doing software stuff.
No,
coding.
man. I like it. Hey, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time. And, actually, tell us about Dealmachine before we head out. So,
Of course, yeah.
So, summarize it a little bit for us, you know, what it does and where people can go.
Right. So, Dealmachine helps real estate investors find more deals, and it helps you scale driving for dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either buy a lead list online, but every other investor is going to have that. So you can use Dealmachine to create your own list of distressed properties. These are people that would likely want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically can send other people out there to add properties for you. And Dealmachine will automatically send out a postcard on repeat, or you can skip trace them and get their phone number and call them right there. So we provide the technology to help you scale that team to go out there and look for those properties.
Awesome.
The website's dealmachine.com, and we've got a 14-day free trial that you can check out.
Oh, it's free for 14 days. Cool.
Yep.
There you guys have it. If you guys want to tap into real estate, it's actually one of the best ways to do it. It's low cost, low entry barrier as well. So, it's one of the first strategies that you should hit if you're looking at real estate investments. So, yeah, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you having the time, because it was a very, very last minute thing that we kind of did here, and then dropping some golden nuggets.
Absolutely,
I appreciate
man.
having you, man.
Thank you.
There you guys have it. So stay tuned, stay focused. You got this.